Welcome back to the Eight Man Breakdowns podcast. This is where we discuss all phases of the game of football, including philosophy, play concepts, questions, and more. Today's interview will be a different style of interview podcast. So I'll actually be interviewing myself today. I often talk about concepts, and break down college teams. And a lot lately I've been doing is interviewing several other coaches and putting it on the podcast. But I kind of realized I haven't really given much background info about myself. So I decided to use the same format that I use for guest interviews, but just go through the answers and questions myself. Okay, so the guest today is myself, Mitch Inglekin. I'm currently in my first year as the head coach at Stafford High School, the Trojans in Stafford, Kansas. This is my 7th year total of coaching varsity football. I actually coached junior high as a head coach for a couple years there during that time. But this is my first year ever as a head coach and at Stafford High School now. So that's my current situation. Now let me get into these questions here. So the first question I always ask is start by having you tell me about yourself, your football background, how you got started coaching football. So this is going to be kind of a long story, honestly, but I knew I wanted to become a coach as a freshman and a sophomore in high school. So I'll start a little bit about how I came up, I guess, my background. So, anyways, I grew up on a farm in Northeast Kansas. I have an identical twin brother, and him and our parents, they kind of introduced us to sports at a really young age. And we really just played together a lot to keep busy, playing all different sports, football, baseball, basketball. And so we grew up, loving to play sports together. And my dad farmed, and he also was the head maintenance man at B&B High School where I attended school. Actually, he attended there too. But so me and my brother went to B&B High School. We grew up going to B&B sporting events because our dad, like I said, was the head maintenance man, and we always just kind of helped our dad set up for all the games, clean up after all the games, and it was really awesome. I mean, it was fun. Looking back at that, I mean, I definitely miss those days, but we were always at school. I mean, far more than we were at home because from about second to eighth grade years on after school, we would ride the bus over to the high school in Daleville, and we had to stay until our dad was off work at 5 o'clock. So we had to stay from 3:30 to 5 every single day at the high school. Grades 2 to 8, and then when our dad got off work at 5, we'd ride home with him. So in a way, we really kind of grew up in the school building because even if he had gotten off work at 5 and had to be back there at 6 or whatever the case was for a home game, we would always go help him out. And then if it was a home game, like after the football game, we'd clean up the locker rooms, take out the trash, put all the yard markers away, all that type of stuff. So anyways, we kind of really grew up in the school building, and I was always kind of drawn to wanting to coach and wanting to be a part of a sports team, a high school sports team. And so anyways, we attended B&B High School, and obviously we were lucky enough to have a legendary 8-man coach, Steve Tiernan. He was actually my K-12 PE teacher and then, of course, high school football coach. And so he had me literally from kindergarten until my 11th grade junior year. And that was when, after our junior year, he left and went to Osborne. But so we were very lucky. And not only to have great coaches and teachers, but to have a really great community. Looking back and even now, we were truly blessed with the amazing community we have. I mean, I had two amazing parents at home, they always held us accountable. And then when we had great coaches and teachers at school each day that reinforced that same accountability, I mean, it really led to a lot of athletic and academic success, not only for myself, but it was consistent all around the entire community. A lot of two-parent homes where the parents were really holding kids accountable. And then, like I said, having great teachers and coaches at school each day reinforce that same belief. And so in junior high, I started playing football for the first time. Never played anything prior to junior high. And in 7th grade, we went 5-2. In 8th grade, we went 7-0. And then moved up into high school with Coach Tiernan. And freshman year, didn't know what to expect. I always tell my players I was the fifth string running back by default because we only had 5 running backs. And well, we went on to go 13-0 and beat Clifton Clyde my freshman year. And actually, throughout the course of the season, I got to move up and be the starting JV running back. And so then by default again, though, the next season when 2 kids graduated and one of them moved to defense, I was the backup running back by default because there was only one other running back in front of me. And so I got some some small opportunities, like cleanup time at the end of games, but mostly special teams until my junior year when I got to start. But my sophomore year, though, we lost in the state game by 2 to Quinter, so finished 12-1. And then my junior year, when I did finally get to start, we went 13-0. We beat Otis Bison in the state game, and then finally my senior year, when Tiernan had left and we had a new coach, Coach Justin Cope, and we went all the way to the state game again and lost to Thunder Ridge that year, and finished 12-1. And I actually had broke my leg in the sub-state game, so unfortunately didn't get to play in that state game, and that was something that really kind of, I don't know, it kind of made me feel like I wasn't done playing football. Um, but we finished, like I said, with a 12-1 record overall and 50-2 record in the 4 years combined, the winningest class in B&B history over the 4 seasons. But like I said, after high school, I really felt that I wasn't ready to stop playing because I broke my leg and didn't get to compete in the final game of my career in that state game my senior year. After my senior year, though, I took a scholarship at Highland Community College, really as an athlete, to play some slot receiver, some running back. I honestly felt slower than ever after breaking my leg. I know I probably didn't take my physical therapy too serious, to be honest. But after getting to Highland, I ended up redshirting as a freshman and became the scout team slot receiver the entire first season. So I played a lot of slot receiver. Also played return man and was on the punt return team and kickoff team for scout team and all that. I did all scout team that year, but playing slot receiver was probably the funnest. Even though it was scout team, they still didn't want to get kids hurt. But I mean, being a slot receiver, a small slot receiver like I was, I definitely got popped a few times by some actual D1 and actually NFL type players. But it was overall a great experience being a slot because for me to learn the route tree and the 11-man pass concepts, that was all new to me, but it was a huge learning experience for me. And after we reached spring ball that first year, though, I kind of had enough. I mean, I was ready to call it quits. I don't know if I felt that I had accomplished, continuing to play a little bit longer, but I called it quits. And I made many connections and lifelong friends, from my teammates at Highland and even my roommates as well. But and also, like I said, learned a lot of new things about the game of football. And I truly, really enjoyed my time at Highland. I would never go back and change that. Going to Highland and going to junior college, that was one of the funnest times, for sure. So, but looking back, instead of just giving it up, football, I really wish I would have talked to my coaches and tried to be a GA assistant. Hindsight's always 2020, but I felt like I definitely would have built a few more coaching connections had I actually been a GA coach to help the other coaches. I was always just a player, but like I said, hindsight's always 2020. But anyway, after Highland, I transferred to K-State just to finish up. And in my first year at K-State, I needed professional growth hours, towards my education degree. I was trying to be a PE teacher and try to get into education and get to coaching. And so I called up Coach Tiernan, because he had just recently left Osborne to go to Solomon, which is about 40 minutes from Manhattan. And so I asked him, I said, can I help out with some summer workouts, or just come observe and volunteer? And he said, absolutely, and the first day I got there, I got offered a job to be their assistant high school boys basketball coach, so the first day I got there. And so shortly after that, after hanging out with Tiernan and helping him out with weights, he just said, hey, you want to coach football? And I said, absolutely, and so I've been coaching ever since. So that's kind of how I got into football. I've kind of bounced around a little bit. I spent 3 years there with Tiernan at Solomon High School before I went to Axtell and got to coach under Coach Eric Detweiler, another legendary coach, for 2 years. And then last year went back to Osborne with Tiernan. I say back to Osborne. I had never been to Osborne, but Tiernan had. So I went to Osborne for a year to coach under Tiernan again. And then now this is my first year as a head coach at Stafford High School here in Stafford, Kansas. So that was definitely a lot for the first question, I know. So we'll finally move on to question number 2 here. Question number 2, was there anyone specifically in your life that led to your path as a coach? So any specific people? Um, I would say obviously Coach Tiernan, for sure. Like I said, my parents definitely too. I mean, they got us introduced to sports at a really young age. My dad would roll the ball around in the living room or we'd get the baseball and the bat. It was just a little wiffle ball and bat, and we go outside, and he taught us how to swing and all that stuff. And then when we taught each other kind of how to throw a football and catch. I mean, our dad kind of introduced us to that as well. But then, after your parents get busy during the day and or on the weekends, then you go outside with your brother and you play. And we would go out a lot. I mean, and I don't know how many million times that we didn't go outside, and our parents always said, "Don't throw the ball in the house." I mean, I'm sure we broke a ton of things because we never followed that rule very well, obviously. But yeah, so I would say specific people in my life that led to my path as a coach, obviously my parents, and then definitely Coach Tiernan. So like I said, my parents holding me accountable, going through high school and growing up, and then hearing those same like life lessons and accountability and just being reinforced, like I said, at school by Coach Tiernan, probably more than others, but like I said, my teachers were the same, and so having them great role models and parental figures really hammering that stuff home, that's who I would say in my life that led to my path as a coach. So number three, what if anything would you say separates your program from others? Okay, so I mean, this is my first year running a program, as a head coach. I would say what separates us, I don't know for sure. I would say running like a spread option style of an offense isn't very common in eight man, as well as we do a no huddle system with signaling, pretty much nonverbal and a lot of all signals. But I say that we do have some verbal calls in an audible system. And a lot of that has been what I learned in college and throughout my different places that I've been over the last 7 years of coaching and the different coaches. I mean, I've only been under two head coaches in my 7 years, but I've had so many assistant coaches and met so many different assistant coaches. And so there's been a lot of people, again, this would go back to number two a little bit, of people in my life that have affected my path as a coach. Maybe not led me to that, but I've had tons of great coaches in my life. And literally every assistant coach that I know or that I worked with has been an amazing coach, And so I've learned things from everyone. And so I guess I'm kind of going off topic, but what would separate my program? Again, I said I mean, just running a spread option and a no huddle and kind of being like 90% nonverbal in all signals. So, I mean, I'd say that's not very common for eight man. I do know a couple teams in Kansas that do that, but there's not many. So that's what I would say separates our program from others. Number four, tell us about last year. What, if anything, would you change if you could do it over again? So last year I was at Osborne with Tiernan. That was my one and only year there. And I wouldn't change much. I mean, I kind of like I was talking to Coach Klatsik in one of my podcast interviews, and he said he would, if he could change anything, he would try to prevent injury from his starting quarterback. And that's what I would say about our team at Osborne last year. We had a really good team and athletes in several positions, and a fairly experienced line at the time, and things just kind of didn't go our way with the injury bug. But we got to the playoffs and we had a chance, and of course we didn't execute, and we played a really good Hanover team, which is always good. But if I could change anything, I would just once again I'd probably do what Coach Latzik said and try to prevent injury or do whatever we could to stay healthy. Number five, what was the high point or turning point of last year? What'd you learn the most about your team? So the turning point in the season, probably a downfall turning point. We we were playing Thunder Ridge and we were up 14 to start the fourth quarter, but we actually had one of our better players, or probably our fastest kid, well, actually easily our fastest kid, Mason Sure got hurt, and he was our running back, and he was really making plays in that game. I think he had a couple 50-plus-yard touchdown runs in that game. And when he went out, I would say it was a downfall turning point just because we kind of started to put our head down and some doubt crept in because we had some freshmen have to come into the game and fill some positions of injury and you can't do that against a good team. Thunder Ridge it was a very good team and was a big team, very physical, and so they knew that as soon as we had some injuries and we put our head down and they really took control of the game, and that's how fast an 8 man game can swing, especially against a good team. And so what we learned most about the team was we weren't necessarily as mentally tough as we should have been. So I guess you could say that would be my other answer for number four. If we could change something, would be, again, try to stay healthy, but maybe be a little more mentally tough and kind of push through adversity a little more. But But I think, like Coach Tiernan said when I interviewed him, I think that was a huge learning point for a lot of the young guys, and a huge thing that they can use going forward was learning from that loss when we had the lead and we lost a couple guys going out due to getting banged up and then we completely shut down and we didn't score another point, in the fourth quarter. I think they scored 24 points and now outscored us 24-0 when we were up by 14 at one point. But so yeah, I would say that's what we learned most about our team was we needed to obviously try to stay healthy and then next try to be a little more mentally tough. So that's number 5. Number 6, what specifically do you look forward to most in this upcoming season? So for me specifically, honestly, I mean, it's my first year as a head coach. So I'm just really excited to get the season started. I'm really looking forward to being able to impact these kids and hopefully in a beneficial way and make some noise and get to the playoffs. I know Stafford is not historically speaking a deep playoff contender or hasn't really ever been, and so that's what I'm looking forward to most this upcoming season is trying to make some noise early on and and set a precedent basically for upcoming kids and classes for them to continue the success. And if we can get some success this year, I really think that we can build off of it and go forward from there, and try to make it a consistent thing, of course. So what I'm looking forward to most is just getting the chance to coach these guys and coach the game of football and make a positive, lasting impact on these kids' lives and hopefully in a successful way on the football field as well. So that's what I really look forward to, and I'm really excited to get the season going. Number 7, what is your opinion on athletes playing multiple sports? So I was a three-sport athlete: football, basketball, track. Um, Again, kind of by default, that's all we had. We were such a small school; we only had football, basketball, and track. But I love doing all of them. Now, Coach Tiernan was the head football and head track coach, but we had two assistant track coaches that were different coaches. And in basketball, we had two different coaches, and as well as football, we had two different assistant coaches that did not coach track. So we saw a bunch of different like coaching styles, and so it was cool to see that because and also my junior high coach, his coaching style was probably one of my favorite all-time favorites. He was another I would say he would be another person that led me to my path as a coach because he made junior high football so fun, and that was Ben Sism. He made football fun, and you could tell from day one that he truly cared about you, and he could care less if we actually won the game or lost, but he wanted you to do well and succeed, and he was going to do anything to help you. Now he was still going to hold you accountable, not like he just let you have fun all the time or nothing like that, but he was one of those guys that really reached out to the kids. He showed interest in you and asked you what you were doing, and he was a big Nebraska fan, and we would always joke with him about K-State and Nebraska. Of course, they were in the Big 12 back then. He also pushed us to try new things, do things. He's like, well, why don't you do that? Like I still remember when I was in eighth grade, my seventh grade year, I had the fastest 100 time for all the seventh grade boys. And then my eighth grade year, uh, in the fall, we were doing two days and we were running with helmets only. No, we were running full pads. I take that back. We were running full pads, and I wasn't winning in our sprints during practice. And he said, "Mitch, what are you doing back there? You're the fastest kid out here." And I said, "Not in pads." That was honestly my response. I still remember this. And he said, "Yes, you are." And after that, I don't know what it was. I truly had some sort of belief that I wasn't fast in pads. And then after that, I always went as hard as I could. And relating this back to multiple sports, he definitely pushed you to do multiple sports because he was a three-sport coach. He coached track, junior high track for boys. He coached junior high football, and he coached high school girls basketball throughout the season. And I've actually gone on to do that throughout my coaching career now, but he was one that really pushed multiple sports and like several other guys that I've interviewed on this podcast, these small schools, if you don't have the kids going out for all sports, they're not going to have that sports team. So my opinion on multiple sports is I think everybody should do it. I think everybody should try it at least, because like I said, you're going to learn different coaching styles and different teaching styles from different coaches. And then I'm going to steal what Coach Long said. You're going to build the camaraderie between athletes, like they're going to respect and support each other and then grow that teamwork and unity together just from being involved in multiple sports on the same sports team. And so multiple sports is huge. And the last one, biggest tips or advice to any aspiring football coaches. Well, I kind of made one of my first ever videos here on YouTube was growing as a coach. And so I would go back to those tips. I would say read books. I mean, so many people look down on books and reading, and it's not fun. And I think that's probably the education system's problem because growing up and when you get to high school English, you have to read this book. It's on the list. You have to read this. And kids don't want to read that. I didn't want to read whatever it was. I forget the book we even read. That's how important it was to me. But I mean, let the kid choose what books they want to read. Like I've read so many football books since I graduated and since I started coaching even more. I mean, so I would say read books, do things, learn. Just try to get out of your comfort zone, ask people questions and learn. And that was the biggest thing I've learned was when I read the Flip the Script, the book by Ed Ogeron, 2 years ago, when that or maybe it's a year and a half ago. Whenever that book first came out, when I read that, that was a huge point of emphasis to me was get out of your comfort zone. Try new things. When somebody calls with an opportunity, consider it at least, or if it's something that you might like or you might be interested in, jump on it, because it's going to build connections. You're going to get out of your comfort zone and learn and grow, and that's how you grow. You got to get out of your comfort zone to grow. Period. I truly believe that, and so that would be my biggest tips or advice to aspiring football coaches. Another thing I would say is, adapt. I don't think enough coaches try to adapt to their team. And I think 8-man gets a bad rap for that specific thing because when 11-man coaches or colleges go watch some 8-man guys, they might just be running the I formation the whole time. So it's kind of hard to watch a skill player unless he's a quarterback or running back in an offense like that. So another thing would be adapt, play to your strengths, find out what your strengths are, obviously identify your weaknesses as well. And overall, yeah, get out of your comfort zone, try new things, ask questions, and have fun. Don't sweat it and try to win every game. I mean, you want to win, you want to be successful, but don't approach it as life or death. And that's it. I know that was extremely long, a long story from beginning to end. And like I said, I haven't really given him much background info about myself, so I just kind of wanted to use that format of guest interviews and go through it myself. So hopefully you learned something from me, and that way in future podcasts you kind of know where I come from as far as coming up with these questions and reaching out to other coaches. And in the future, I do plan on trying to have other and branch out and have other coaches on the podcast. Currently, I've just kind of had several coaches that I've already met and known just because it was easier to reach out to them and find time. I do hope to branch out here in the future with other coaches outside of the state of Kansas. If anybody is interested in being on the podcast, I'd love to have other coaches. I love talking football. Football's been my life, like I said, from a very early age. And I knew I wanted to be a high school football coach and PE teacher from, like I said, freshman, sophomore year. So it's a dream come true, and I'm finally getting to be a head coach this year, and really excited to finally get started. So, and that's going to do it for this episode of the 8-Man Breakdowns podcast. Remember, videos come out every Tuesday night, so be sure to tune in. If you have a question for me, the best way to reach me is by commenting in the comment section below. If you've learned anything or enjoyed any of these videos, please click subscribe and check out some of my other videos right here on the screen. And like always, thanks for tuning in, guys.